to design for the real world, we start getting like inside the box because we always have like a client to correspond and also so many things that put us inside a box. So I'm very, very fascinated on like how infinite is humans' creativity.
Welcome back, everyone, to Barriers to Entry, the podcast where every episode we get into it, the leaders, the designers, the early adopters, and the influencers who are helping to shape what Web3, the Metaverse, and the blockchain will mean for the architecture and design industry. I'm here for our first bonus episode with my magnanimous co-hosts, Tessa Bain and Bonett. Welcome, guys.
Normally, we're not hanging out every week, but this week we're bringing a special episode. And why is that, Tess?
That is because we have a really special guest this week, Amanda Ferber. She was one of our very esteemed Mad Awards jurors and is most known for founding Architecture Hunter, which you can check out on Instagram. She has over 3 million followers and develops the most exciting content in the architecture industry on Instagram.
Did you know I have over 300 followers on Instagram, Tess?
Yeah, it's actually, if you just take that and add a couple zeros, maybe like 10.
Amanda and I aren't too different.
Yeah, you might need to post a little bit more. And for those who were not playing along at home, the Mad Awards, of course, refers to the Interior Design, Metaverse, Architecture, and Design Awards, the inaugural awards, where the gala event will be held in the Metaverse, special invite only, I believe, Bobby, this week. But we will be making that experience available to everyone, and the show notes will be a great way to find the information about how to experience our gala location in the Metaverse, as well as all the great projects that you'll hear Tess and Amanda speaking about in the pod.
Pop into the show notes, sign up for an invite. It'll be a Mad Awards Metaverse. You'll be able to watch the presentation, the announcement of the winners, and then experience a hall featuring all of the winners of our first Mad Awards as well. I wasn't able to join Andrew and Tess for this interview, so I'm as excited as the listeners to get into it. So should we have a listen?
Let's do it. We could not be more excited to welcome today's very special guest. You might know her from her boundary-pushing, architecture-focused Instagram, or for Dehant, her international virtual reality exhibition featuring architects from 9 countries. I'm excited to welcome, all the way from Sao Paulo, Brazil, the founder of Architecture Hunter, Amanda Ferber. Welcome to the pod, Amanda.
Welcome.
Thank you, Tessa. Thank you, Andrew. I'm very excited to be here in your podcast. It's like an honor for me. So thank you so much.
Really excited to have you. So we met just about a year ago, I guess, at Salone, when you'd come to a panel that Tess and I had been on. And that's when we started to really get to know your story. But for the listeners of the podcast, just tell us about Architecture Hunter and where that got started and how it came to be what it is today.
Okay, so that's a very nice story because, to be honest, like this year, Architecture Hunter completes 10 years.
Congratulations.
And I really, really, really like didn't imagine how like that one day I'll be here when I created it, you know, it was like really genuine. It was a hobby for me in the beginning. So yeah, it was in 2013. It was my first year in college, in architecture school. And I was so excited about architecture because like since a child, I used to say, okay, I want to be an architect. So I always liked it. In architecture school, of course, like we always have to study lots of references. So our professors always want us to bring study cases. So I started making a folder in my phone with architecture pictures. And I thought like, okay, the world needs to see this because I realized like this so nicely created architecture projects and I really wanted more people to see it, you know. And Instagram, like as a platform, was created in 2010, but got more popular in 2012. But at that time, people used to have only like their personal profiles, you know, their personal accounts. So that was not very common at that time. So Architecture Hunter being created in 2013, like it means that it was one of the first architecture profiles on Instagram. So I think this helped too. And also like posting everything in English because like in Brazil we speak Portuguese. And sometimes this is a question that comes from people from my country, like, oh, well, like why were you posting in English? And well, it's just because the projects were from all over the world. I just wanted everyone to understand what I was talking about.
Flashing forward to today, I mean, we've been talking about this as an Instagram handle, but this is a full architectural content operation at this point. Your team is 15 or 16 people. Can you talk a little bit about what this hobby has now become 10 years later?
Yeah, so this is something also that I could not imagine that was going to happen. So in 2018, when I graduated, I understood that, okay, I need to do something else with this. Like, this is my calling, So I always believed a lot in the power of videos, like in the audiovisual, spread a message, especially when it comes to architecture, because I think it's completely different to hear an architect or a designer talking about their work, and because they talk a lot with so much passion, and also to showcase a project, different when you're working with videos. So I hired film production from Brazil, from some friends of mine, and we started doing some videos here in São Paulo, interview some of my favorite architects, and the result was great. So we spent like the whole year, 2019, filming, but then pandemic hit, COVID hit, and we didn't know what to do exactly, because we didn't know like how long we would have to stay at our homes, like we had to stop. But at some point that made me think that, okay, for us to produce as much content that we want, I had to have my own team. So I invited my friend that was the owner of this film production to be a partner at Architecture Hunter, because he had this like background in audiovisual. And then he also introduced me to another person, Luis, that used to have a production company. He had already made films for Netflix or for the movies, So he had much more experience than us. So in August 2020, both of them came to Architecture Hunter and joined as partners. And then we started building our own team. So now we are actually 17, but we also have some correspondents around the world. We have a team located in Milan and in Portugal. Sometimes we go from Brazil to other places to do the shootings too. So yeah, like if I met Amanda for 2013 and I told her that all these things would be happening, I definitely would not believe.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How is it that you are like thinking about monetizing the business then, now that you've got like a staff and you've got, operations on multiple continents? What are some of the ways that you're working with brands and then other sort of formats?
Yeah. So we always work with brands because we really want to keep our creatorship like independent. So it's not like, the architect get in touch with us and then they hire us to make like a short film about their work. It's never like this. Sometimes the architects send us a project as a suggestion for a publication, and we think, okay, this project has like lots of potential to be more than just a publication, but a short film about it, an interview about it. And then usually the architects, they send us a list of manufacturers or brands that were involved in that project. And then our team from Architecture Hunter get in touch with these brands to try to understand if they're interested in sponsoring the video or the content on Instagram. And that's interesting because 70% of our audience are professionals, like that work with architecture or design, and 30% are like what we call enthusiasts. Most of them are professionals. So they want to know, like we had lots of comments on our post, like, where is this sofa from? What is this material? So our audience wants to know this information. This is an important information for them. So like the brand needs to reach out to architects professionals so they can specify their product. And our audience wants to know like the deals from the market. So it's a very interesting business model because this way we keep our creatorship independent and we can work with brands that the architects also believe that they trust.
Yeah.
Quick interruption from me, Amy Devers, host of the podcast Clever. I'm excited to tell you that Clever, a podcast about the creative visionaries who shape our world and culture, is a proud new member of the Surround Podcast Network. Surround is a collective of great shows from the design industry, like Inhabit from Perkins & Will, and Architecture 51020 from FX Collaborative. Head over to surroundpodcast.com and find your next favorite show.
Curious if you're seeing more recently a rise in digital art and digital architecture.
Yes. Well, I'm seeing some great like CGI artists or like people working with digital architecture and digital images to represent architecture. I like to see that people are engaging with things like this because I think this way people can they can express themselves and what they believe in architecture and design in a way that more people can understand, because especially like those that are just enthusiasts, they don't work with architecture or design. Sometimes like the ways that we had to represent architecture or design were more,
subjective or not only easy for everyone to understand. So I like to see what like digital
doing for our sector and for even more people get interest.
Do you get feedback from the community on it too? Because I know you do a lot of really great surveys on your stories and things like that. Are people, choosing those projects and gravitating towards those designs, or do people gravitate towards more classic traditional architecture?
No, I think people love to see like those contemporary architecture and modernist, or I don't know, like we usually tend to post more contemporary, like not so classical architecture. And it is interesting to see the feedback from people because like they are always very curious to know more details about the project.
Well, that's a great approach. Selfishly, I get to chat today with two people who had the pleasure of being the first jurors for our Metaverse Architecture and Design Awards. This was a unique opportunity because we're all seeing a lot more virtual and digital work coming through the architecture space, but part of the vision and concept of the Mat Awards was to say, let's try to put it as much of it as we can in one place and really celebrate it and create a platform so that those people who are maybe a little bit more hesitant getting into the space can see how much great work's being done.
I was a little overwhelmed. I'm not going to lie. I logged in and I mean overwhelmed in a good way. It was just exciting to see the volume of the shortlisted finalists, and also was pleasantly surprised to see the quality of the submissions as well. I just thought that was really cool. We had major corporations, established architecture and design firms. We had hospitality companies. So, really that was kind of my first impression right out of the gate.
Yeah, I love it too.
You go into that jury portal and you see those shortlisted entries that were part of what we were given as your judging package. Like, what were those first impressions like?
It was so hard at the same time because there were so many good projects and you had to kind of make a ranking, of the best ones. And that was so hard. Thank God that I'm not the only one who has to decide this because I couldn't choose only some of them.
If you were struggling, then that makes me feel a lot better because I was having a very hard time. I was handing out 5s like candy at one point.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to be judging through the lens of both practiced utility, so metaverse designs that kind of mimic and could enhance physical spaces and things that we're doing, that would be very easily replicated and or built in the physical world. And then kind of hold up against different categories where it's maybe more, is metaphysical the right word, where it's out of this world types of architecture or design. And that was an interesting to wrap your head around that process.
Usually the projects that were not possible to build were more intriguing. I really like to see those, but again, it was so hard to rate all of them because they were so interesting.
I think also too, just being that it's the first year, I was really impressed with the submissions of the inaugural year. I think what will be very fascinating is to witness the evolution of the design in this space, because it's almost like we're early days, kind of everyone is building spaces that do have some sort of reference to real life. One of the things I noticed is that many of the structures that were metaverse based, meaning that would not be able to be built in real life, actually still possessed very IRL kind of structures like columns. Why, walking through a space do you require structural columns in a metaverse build? So it felt like we're still referencing, in most cases, on that side of things, practical building elements. And I'd be really curious to see as the years sort of unfold with Matt, how that evolves.
Yeah. This point that you mentioned was something that it really made things even harder because there were some projects that were incredible, but they had these columns. Then there were some other projects that were very interesting, but they were more out of the box, So I thought this person understood more that they're building metaverse and that some things are not needed. So it was very hard to rate because I had to rate on their creativity and also on aesthetics. There was a specific project that I think it was a gallery and the art pieces were floating. I don't know if you remember this one. Yeah, and I really like that. I hope to see more like this next year.
Same. Yeah, that one was incredible. And that's exactly thinking outside the box is, you don't need gravity. And so you have the opportunity to sort of exhibit pieces of art or artwork in a way that you can view from 360 degrees, including under and over. And I thought that was really cool.
Did you find yourselves having to consciously think differently on that point? Like, Tess, you brought up the columns example. Amanda, you brought up the floating artwork. Like, they're kind of they're sort of the opposite examples. But were you finding that you needed to kind of put a different frame of thinking on as you went into some of the projects? Or was it something that would just sort of flowed naturally out of like creativity and inspiration, or maybe a hybrid of the two?
A little bit. Like there's a little bit of it where it's not an apples to apples. It's very hard to compare a digital twin, let's say, up against something that would be completely out of the box. It almost feels more like you're experiencing art in that way, that you have to it's a little abstract. You have to remove, the confines of your mind to experience it, versus when you are experiencing a place which is, has fundamental physics, I guess is the way to say. And that's not to say that those places don't also possess an element of art, but you do have to sort of understand why something might have been created in the way that it was.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just like when the projects were not following the physics rules, you kind of add another layer, in the experience. So you're not only paying attention to the piece of art, but also in the experience of seeing the piece of art, So I think that's the difference, and that's what actually makes it so cool to have an art gallery in Metaverse,
Yeah, the galleries are an awesome application.
So I think the other thing that's going to be really exciting about the way the awards come to a conclusion is that we're actually going to be able to invite the industry to come into the space and really explore not only the finalists and the winners, but just kind of your own thoughts as jurors. And we even have a little bit of a surprise coming for what that space is going to look like. But I mean, Tess, you've kind of been on the inside a little bit, and Amanda, you're running a little bit blind, and I think that that's kind of interesting. Like, what is it that you're hoping that people who experience the outcome of these awards will think and feel and maybe do?
I really hope that people take the opportunity to try to come into the space. So we have, of course, audience of all different experiences. So people that have spent a lot of time in Metaverse, people that have not spent any time in the Metaverse. Being that it's a very accessible place, like headsets are not required, so goggles are not needed to experience. I really hope that accessibility opens the doors for people to take their first steps, and you can't see I'm doing air quotations, into the Metaverse, into our galleries. And it's a really immersive way to get to experience a lot of these finalists and a lot of the submissions. I mean, we're taking advantage of the fact that it's in the Metaverse. It's not common for the greater audience, for the most part, to be able to experience an award show in this fashion. So I'm excited about that.
Amanda, what are you thinking?
I hope that the results of this award makes people be more creative, because sometimes when we have to design for the real world, we start getting inside the box, because we always have a client to correspond, and also budget and rules of physics rules, so many things that put us inside a box. So I'm very, very fascinated on how infinite is humans' creativity, and especially architects and designers' creativity. Very fascinated on it. And especially because I've been working with curating architectural projects for 10 years. That's what fascinates me, because in the beginning, I used to think someday this is have to end, or people will still be building amazing things, and now I see that things get even better, even more interesting. So it's my process in being a creator of architecture for 10 years made me be very fascinated about it. And then with Metaverse is something else, because now people can be even more creative. Mm-hmm. And I think that this award will help people to get outside of the box, not even for those who are doing projects for the award, but for people who will just go there and see the results of this project, because this will inspire people,
So you've been doing some inspiring of your own as well. I mean, you told us that 2019 was your first experience with virtual reality goggles, and that set you on a path to create a really unique exhibition. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that program and what it was and how you're evolving it.
It was so interesting. So I have friends that they had an architecture studio, and then they opened a side business to actually start working with 3D, 360 degrees models, goggles. And then I went to their studio, and it was my first experience with Oculus. And I was so amazed on the potential that this has for architecture, because it was so interesting. Like, they were showing me some projects that you just had to point and you can select, like, if you want like a marble flooring or like a wood flooring, I don't know. And it was so interesting. I thought, okay, this is something that definitely is going to change the world for us, or like our industry, And I got very fascinated, because there is something that in school, like, professors always say, that we have, like, for us to be good architects, we have to travel and visit as much like architectural pieces that we can, architectural projects. And I know that this is not like a reality for everyone. So I thought, okay, like, there are so many incredible architects, and there's so much like infinite creativity in their minds. It would be amazing to select like our favorite architects from different parts of the world and create like an exposition that people can actually visit projects from this incredible architects from different parts of the world, So yeah, and then in 2020, so I had the idea in 2019, I looked for a studio that used to work with Oculus. And then we selected 9 architects from 9 different countries. We invited them to participate in this exposition of ours that is called The Hunt. And we gave them like the same briefing for a project, like the specific briefing for a project. And then they sent us this exclusive project. And then we turned this into virtual reality. But then, of course, because in 2020, also COVID hit, we couldn't make an exposition with people sharing Oculus, so that was not possible. So we have to hold. But during this time, we also improved the experience. And now at the end of this year, we are bringing the first physical exposition. The first edition will happen in São Paulo. So probably it will be in a gallery or something that people will go there, like put the Oculus and have the experience of going in this project. So we invited Kengo Kuma from Japan, Marcio Bogan from Brazil, Fran Silvestre from Spain, Michelle Hodgkin from Mexico, Yodezin from Ukraine, Woha from Singapore, Luciano Curo from Argentina, Drixen Denmark, and I'm missing one.
We'll include a link to it in the show notes, no worries.
But yeah, so like they designed these projects for us, and now at this moment, we are making some like tests with group of people to understand like how long people take to go to all the spaces, to have experience, what we can improve. So hopefully at the end of the year, we'll have the first experience, the first exhibition. And who knows, like the idea is to go to different cities in the world to bring this exposition. So who knows, maybe we'll be in Milan next year. I don't know. Let's see.
That's exciting. Well, it's another amazing initiative. We'll definitely wish you all the best with it. Is there anything else people should watch out for from you or from Architecture Hunter in these coming weeks and months?
Well, last year in December, we kind of like relaunched our platform that follows this like concept that we created for watch and read. So the idea is to always bring content about architecture and design in videos, like especially in videos. But we also have like articles about the video, and we always try to bring another approach, because like our videos are always talking about architecture and design. So in our text, usually we try to bring something else like that is not related to architecture, but something that is interesting for people to know more about that project, So it's pretty interesting because we have some like interactive, only 2 videos that are interactive videos that you can actually like choose the path of the video, like the next project that you want to see, So it's pretty interesting. So for those who have not entered Architecture Hunter's website yet, just go there, architecturehunter.com. And also our newsletter is something new for us too. So yes, I think people would love to subscribe to our newsletter. And you can do this in our website. And yes, I mean, there are lots of things to come this year, but they are yet to come.
Well, that's the perfect segue. We like to always end the pod by asking the question about what advice would you give or resources would you share with a listener out there who's looking to get into this space or even just understand it a little bit better?
I think my advice would try to be always like thinking outside the box. I think this is what the world needs. For architects and designers and everyone to always try to think outside of the box and not to do the same thing that like everyone is doing. And that sometimes it might feel that it's not going to happen. But I think like if you insist, like if you do believe in this new idea and this thing, just go for it. Even if it looks that sometimes it's not going to happen, eventually it does, if you put all your energy in it. And I think when you do things genuinely, it really, things really happen.
I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Amanda. We really appreciated the conversation and the chance to hear your own story. I'm sure that in 10 years from now, the 10 years ago, Amanda will be even more impressed with where you've taken things with Architecture Hunter. But we're super happy that we could have you on today. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Thank you, guys. And congratulations also in all the initiatives, especially with the awards, of course, but also the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Such a great conversation. So sorry you couldn't join us, Bobby, but it was amazing to hear from Amanda. To think that a university sort of folder on her computer could turn into this global media brand is just an incredible testament to the perseverance there, but also, just to the creativity and to the talent that she has. And I thought that was an amazing way for us to be able to also share what we're thinking with the Mad Awards. And I mean, I don't want to step on your toes here with the plug or anything, Bobby, but it was so great to have Amanda on to really help bring that to life along with Tess, who were so inside in that process.
Yeah, and so if you're psyched now to experience the entries and see the winners of the 2023 Interior Design, Metaverse, Architecture, and Design Awards, make sure to head over to the show notes to get a link to sign up, be invited, experience the Metaverse for yourself. Thank you, Amanda, for joining us on today's podcast. Big thank you to our production team, Sam, Wise, Hannah, Rob Schulte, newest member of the club, our Chief Research Officer, Casey Campbell, and the studio by Sandow. That whole team. Barriers to Entry is part of the Surround Podcast Network. Make sure you go to Surround Podcasts. Don't forget the extra S.com, surroundpodcasts.com to follow, find out where to get Barriers to Entry, and experience all of the fantastic programming at the Surround Podcast Network. Smash the follow button.
Or gently tap it,
with whatever force you'd like. Just make sure to follow. Give us 5 stars on your favorite podcast platform, and join us next time as we continue to break down the barriers to entry.
See, Andrew, that's how it's done. That was an epic plug.
Design is a process. It's a journey. It's a way of thinking and feeling. Talented creators are fueled by burning curiosity, and that curiosity expands way beyond the one thing they may be known or recognized for. I'm Evan Ornston.
And I'm Josh Rubin. We're the founders of Cool Hunting, and we invite you to check out Design Tangents, our new podcast that goes behind the scenes with creative change makers to learn about their work, inspiration, challenges, and philosophies.